Hi guys, Simon here and welcome to my third video in my series on applying for the JET program as someone with a physical disability. Now for this video I'm going to be looking at the actual application itself, two parts of the application, the actual application form and also the statement of purpose essay. Now as I said in my previous videos, I did apply for the JET program twice. I applied for the first time in 2011, didn't get up to the interview stage. And I also applied again in 2012, and obviously this time I've completely passed and I'm waiting for my placement. So I have actually kept both of my application forms and my statement of purpose essays, so I am going to be providing a bit of a comparison between what I did on my failed attempt and what I did on my on the attempt where I passed. But there's three main areas that I will be looking at. The first area that I will be looking at is the statement of purpose essay itself, because I really do think that is the key to the entire thing. I think if you can nail that, that is what's going to get you up to the interview stage. The second area I'm going to look at is the application form itself, and then the third area I'm going to look at is the references or the referees that you use for your application attempt. So starting with the statement of purpose essay, as I said, I have kept my previous one and the one that I did that's allowed me to pass this time. So I'm going to actually provide a link for those two essays below this video, just so you can compare them for yourselves, and also maybe you can get some ideas from them. But I think you'll notice a lot of differences between them. But just to sum up some of the areas that I think are really different and the important areas that I think are really different. The first one is tone. You'll notice in the first essay I sort of made the mistake of having a few sort of negative sort of sentences or paragraphs in there in terms of the difficulties involved in internationalisation and that kind of thing. And in the second essay I sort of didn't mention that at all. From the very start of the essay I ensured that I grabbed the reader's attention in the second one. The first one was sort of more about what I hope to do and how I wanted to be a CIR. The second one was showing an awareness of the current problems that exist in Japanese society in terms of internationalisation. So it really was a big difference in the tone. The second one I think is a lot more energetic, and the focus as well in terms of the first essay was more about what the JET program was going to do for me. The second essay was more about what I want to do for the JET program. And also in terms of, if you look at some of the ideas that I present, really in the first one it's sort of a bit piecemeal. In the second one I've brought everything together and I've made it, I've made everything interconnected, and I think it shows that I've put a lot of thought into some of the ideas that I've got there as well, even down to little things in the second one, like I mentioned in there that I hope to become a polite and respectful and responsible member of the local community, just showing that my entire attitude towards this position, from the big picture to the little picture, is that sort of idea. And finally, I think as well a big difference was the amount of drafting that I did between those two essays. Now, both times when I started, I really didn't know what to write about, because it is a very broad essay question. And I think it's something like, if you become a CIR or an ALT, what are your goals and what do you hope to achieve? So the first time I procrastinated on it a bit and I sort of wrote something and then I just sort of left it. The second time I wrote it, I spent like 6 hours the first time I wrote it, rewriting it again and again and again. And then I kept going back over it again and again and again. Probably once a day I would reread it, adjust it, reread it, adjust it, reread it, adjust it. I showed it to friends that were better at writing than me and they provided me with advice as well. So I really did provide myself. I think in total I spent about a month just polishing that essay and making sure it was the absolute best that it could be. So I think that was really important as well. And I'm sure there are other differences that you guys can see for yourselves between those two essays. So like I said, the links are below. The second area that I want to look at is the application form. Now, before I get into the actual application form itself, you'll know that I do just want to provide this as a bit of advice. You'll see when you apply that you do need to get a police clearance and a health certificate done if you do pass the interview. But you also have the option of an early departure in April, in which case you do need to get those done, I think, by January or February or something like that. So the first time I applied, I actually went ahead and I got those done early because I did put down for an early departure. And that ended up being about $150 to $180 in terms of checkups and police checkups and medical checkups, because I had to get a chest X-ray for tuberculosis. And obviously I didn't pass, so that was $180 down the drain, and it was also a lot of time getting all that sort of stuff put together. So that was a real waste of time, and I would strongly recommend not doing that. Even if you do apply for an early departure, I think you get told if you're accepted for an early departure in February or something. I think maybe you don't need to get those done until February or something, or March for the early departure. I don't know. But I think your chances in general of getting an early departure are really low anyway. I don't think, especially in Australia, maybe there are more positions available in America, but I don't think there really are any early departure positions available in Australia from what I could tell on the JET program forum. So save yourself some time and some money and maybe don't do that. Leaving that aside, the actual application form itself, the first one I did, I actually, because my handwriting isn't too good and I can't write for long periods of time, I actually got my parents to fill that in for me, which was a mistake because my parents have really bad handwriting. The second time I applied, I actually, because in Australia, I know overseas it's a little bit different. I think in America a lot of it's online, so which is really nice, but over in Australia we just have a PDF that we download and we have to fill it out and then mail it off. So the second time I applied, I actually used the preview application on OS 10 because I use a MacBook. I don't use Windows PCs, and it actually does allow you to enter text into PDFs. So I actually did that the second time, and I'd really recommend that because it just looks a lot better than having messy scrawl all over the page. And the first time and the second time, I mean, there weren't a lot of big differences, but I think I did put more into my second application form in terms of external stuff that I'd done, sort of extracurricular stuff, everything that made me look like a more rounded applicant. And the third area, the final area that I do want to look at between my two attempts, was the referees that I used. Now, the first time I used one, because I hadn't been working much up to that time, so I used one academic reference, and it wasn't actually the referee I used wasn't actually a Japan-related referee. It was actually one of my teachers for one of my English teaching certifications. The second referee I used was a sort of a more personal reference, but someone that had known me for many years and knew of my interest in Japan and was sort of like a life coach sort of thing to me. So I don't like, they wrote some really good references for me, but I don't really think that it was good enough. It wasn't strong enough in terms of their kind of positions. So the second time I made sure that I got one academic and one working reference, or one reference from my job. So the academic reference, I actually got my Japanese language professor to do the reference for me. Now, the first time I would have liked to have gotten a reference from him as well, but he is renowned for saying that he'll do things and then he'll never get around to doing them. And my friends have asked him for references before and he's never done them. So, and I don't like to bother people, so I sort of thought, I won't use him. But for the second time, as I said in my previous video, I decided that I was only going to apply twice, so I really did need a really good reference, and so I had to keep on badgering him, but he did write me one, and it was a really, really strong reference. It mentioned how I'd been to Japan and lived in Japan with no support, and how quickly my Japanese skills had progressed. He said that I was one of the few students coming from a non-Chinese language background who'd passed the Japanese language proficiency test because of the kanji, the Chinese characters that I used. So he said, one of the few students from an English teaching background that had passed it. that he knew of, and he also mentioned how I was the president of my university's Japanese language club as well. So that was all really good. And then the second reference, like I said, that was actually from a supervisor at my job, and that particular supervisor had actually been involved in giving me a promotion to a senior position. So obviously he recognised my abilities, and he and I were actually quite good friends, or we are still good friends. So he wrote a really good reference for me, explaining how difficult the work was and how stressful it was, and how it involved dealing with people from different cultures and backgrounds, which was really, really good. I was actually surprised at how good the reference he wrote for me was, so that was really good. And on top of that, because he'd studied Japanese in the past, so we'd sort of discussed going to Japan and stuff. So he also mentioned how I was passionate about Japan and interested in Japan. So it was really two excellent references, especially compared to my first references. So that's about all I want to look at for today's video. I'll be making a fourth video about the interview process, about some preparation you may be able to do for that. And I'll also be making some other videos as well over the next few days and weeks. But thanks very much for watching, guys. If you have anything to say, leave a comment below. I'd love to hear from you. Rate this video if you like. I'd love to hear from you in terms of that as well. Thanks very much, and I'll see you again next time. Goodbye.